Hey book lovers, I'm going to do a wee wrap up for the month of April. A good month for reading. I read 3 books. Not a massive amount, but I enjoyed every one, and I'm here to tell you what they were and to discuss some of my wider reading for the month and going forward into May. So, one of my favourite series of all time, Stephen King's The Dark Tower. I read this as a teenager for the first time, and I finished the whole series not that long ago, although now that I think about it, it might actually be about 10 years ago that I finished it, because time, you know how that goes. But I recently discovered a podcast called The Kingslingers, which is a deep dive into this series, and I listened to the discussions on The Gunslinger, and it really inspired me to want to read the series again. So I bought the series, and it was the first video on this channel actually, was my book haul when the series arrived. Should have got that one out first, shouldn't I? The Gunslinger. I got them all used, and I started reading this on the last day of March, which was a Sunday, I believe. I think I sat outside on the porch on a sunny day and read this all day long. I didn't finish it till Monday morning, which would have been the 1st of April. So it's an April book, because I always mark it as when I finish the book as being the month to which the book belongs. How do you do that? Is it where you read the bulk of the book? Interested to hear. So yeah, it's a fantastic book. Very short, easy to read, cracking story, excellent characters, very western but with a fantasy slant to it, and it follows the gunslinger who's on a quest to follow the man in black. It's got one of the most well-known opening lines in literature, which I love. It was such a treat to read it again, and there's so much introduction stuff I'm having trouble getting to it, but here we go. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. I mean, how can you not continue after that? And then came a moment. I finished it and I was thinking, what do I read next? Do I read The Drawing of the Three, which is the second in the series? Or do I read book 2 of the Farseer trilogy? Because I'd read book 1 of that the month before. I decided on the Farseer trilogy. So this is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. A book I've read now 3 times. First time back around 99-2000. And I bought it when I was courting my now wife, when I went to visit her parents for the first time in Cornwall, and I bought it in a little independent bookshop, recommended by the shopkeeper. And I bought the trilogy at that time, and I remember sitting by the River Cam, reading the very opening lines of the first book, and yeah, I was hooked. And the series is an important series for me, which is why I'm enjoying it again so much for the 3rd time. I did a video about the magic system, which explains why these books are so dear to me. So I won't go into that here. You can go and watch that video if you want to hear about that. But it's to do with how the magic system has shaped my philosophy of art and religion, and how I use that in my sobriety from alcohol and drugs. So yeah, if you want to learn more about that, go and watch that video. So this is book 2 of the trilogy, called the Farseer trilogy, and it's very different from the first book. In the first book, Fitz, the main character, is basically growing up from being a young boy into a teenager. In this one, he's dealing with life now as a young man, as a young royal, a member of the Farseer line, albeit an illegitimate member. And it follows his story much more deeply into his bonding with animals, which is the magic system known as the wit. And being of the Farseer blood, he also has access to the magic system known as the skill. So these are two, I suppose, not conflicting systems. They're more sort of intertwined, I think. The skill allows one to communicate with other people using this magic system. I mean, among other things. And the wit allows you to communicate with animals. And Fitz has both of these, so he's a bit of an outlier in the world. And at the time, witted people are seen as being like witches. They're not highly regarded at all, but quite the opposite. So he has to try and kind of keep it a secret. And it's quite a long book, quite slow moving in parts. But for me, it's just a comfort read. It's so easy to read. It's so engrossing. It looks long, and it is long. It's the kind of book you think, wow, that's going to take a month, and then you end up reading it in a week. Was it a week? I don't think it was quite as quickly as that, but it didn't take long. And I decided I was going to read the rest of the series, because this is the first trilogy. There are other books in what's known as the realm of the Elderlings, which has 16 books in total. Now, I've read the first 2 trilogies. This trilogy 3 times. The second trilogy, called The Live Ship Traders, I've read only once. And I haven't read any of the other books at all. So I decided I was going to read 1 book a month and carry on until I get to the end. So the next one, Assassin's Quest, is earmarked for May. But have a look. See my bookmark? So I'm at page 348 already of an 800 plus page book. So much for waiting until May, huh? If I'm tired or I'm travelling, there's a lot of noise around me, like on a ferry or on a train. Something like this really is something I can get into. The world just disappears. If I'm reading more classic literature or in Russian, which I'm at the moment doing with War and Peace and Crime and Punishment, if I'm reading in Russian, then that takes a lot more brain effort and the distractions just pull me out of the book. So these are great travelling books, and I'm travelling quite a bit now for reasons which I won't go into, but yeah, just such a great story. So I highly recommend them, and the fact I've read these 3 times tells you something, doesn't it? So that's 2 books for April. The third one, Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Classic Victorian literature. This is the April read-along in the classics section on Mike's Book Reviews Discord channel. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. This was a book I read for the first time in my late teens, which was an abridged version on cassette that I got from some magazine or other. You know, the ones where they give you like a cassette on the front with a free second cassette for the next one, and then you've got to subscribe to get the rest. That was a common thing in the 80s and 90s. I was much too young to read it then. I remember enjoying the vibe, the prose, but not so much the plot. But, you know, too young. I'm not too young now, and I absolutely adored this book. I read it slowly. I took care to mark sections that stood out to me, of which there were many. And the setting of the book, once again, that's what really stood out to me. The seasons, the descriptive writing, it's just utterly delightful. The way that it portrays pastoral England in the summertime, the farmland. And Tess is working as a dairymaid at Talbothy's farm. It's just delightful, delightful. It's probably a story some of you will have heard or seen on TV. There have been numerous adaptations, movies, including the fabulous 1979 version with Natasha Kinski. Beautiful film. And I think reading this in my 50s is giving it a lot more meaning because I've got more life experience and more context. I have a daughter of my own who's around Tess's age, so that kind of adds another layer to it for me. I won't go into any of the plot, you can look that up yourself. I just wanted to let you know how much I loved it for the vibe, for the feeling that it gave me. And it's a very dark book, it's quite depressing, it's quite melancholic. And for some reason that just vibes with me really hard. To use the parlance of our times, I could relate to Tess in a lot of ways. And the other characters, they're very strong. And the hypocrisy of the Victorian era shines through this book. It's just incredible for that. And also the fact that it's a penguin black spine with creaky pages. That really appeals to me as well. I don't know why. It's just a tactile feeling. I made a video about that, so you can check that out. It's like an ASMR black spine noise video. But yeah, that's me. That's my 3 reads for April. Good going. I'm excited to read this and finish it in May and then get into the Live Ship Traders series. I'm also continuing with my War and Peace read along, which I just started a week ago. I discovered through a comment on my YouTube channel where I got this book. Another Penguin Classics Deluxe. And someone commented about Simon Heisel's read along, and I was like, oh, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. I've got enough going on. And very next day is like, sign me up. So I'm playing catch up with this. It's a favourite of mine for reasons which I went into in my War and Peace book haul video. Crime and Punishment continues. 7 translations and the Russian. There's a read along happening for that. If you'd like to join, come and see me. Next book for classics on Mike's book reviews, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, another beautiful Penguin Classics Deluxe edition, which I bought this week in Glasgow, Waterstones. So I'll be reading that. It's quite short, so that leaves a bit of scope, doesn't it? So I'm going to pick a non-fiction book off my shelf. One of my Stalin books probably. Or maybe what's the one? The guy who wrote the Lenin book. Gosh, what's his name? Robert Service. I might look up one of his history books with a history of Russia and the Soviet Union. Because I've got a lot of them to get through, and the fiction I'm reading right now seems to be taking over. You know, I've got fantasy, I've got classics. It's time to get through that TBR of non-fiction, so I'll probably pick one of them for May. One more thing that's ongoing is my reading of Lord Fowl's Bane, the first of the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, a book that I've read many, many times. This is another read-along that I'm doing with my old pal Barge, a guy I was at uni with back in the 90s, and we've been pals ever since. He's never read any of these. I've read all of them, some of them multiple times, and we're doing a podcast. It's called The Unbelievers, based on the format of the Kingslingers, which, as I've mentioned, I really enjoyed. A deep dive into a series with one host who's read them multiple times and another who's not read them at all. And it's going well. We're currently recording for chapter 15, but we're publishing behind. So if you wanted to catch up, You could. We've just published chapter 9. So that would give you 141 pages if you wanted to catch up. We're reading a chapter a week, so plenty of time to catch up if you want to. It's a classic fantasy series, first published in the 70s and not finished until, was it 2016? I think it was 2016 the last one came out. So it's a long series, 3 books followed by another 3 books followed by 4 books, and you know, it's kind of its time as it begins, and it's very dark. It's kind of grim dark. It's got an anti-hero, Thomas Covenant. Not a likeable fellow really, but he's the main protagonist and we follow him through a fantasy land. It's a bit of a portal fantasy. So he starts in New York and ends up in the land where he's seen as the saviour, the second coming, the redeemer. So yeah, that's called The Unbelievers. That's the name of our podcast. The Unbelievers, a Thomas Covenant podcast. So if you want to listen to it and catch up a bit, that's where you'll find us. That's me. What are you reading in May? How was your April? I'm sure I'll see lots of content coming soon. Just before I go, I'd just like to say that one of the best things that's happened this month is joining Andrew Watson's Discord. I'm already feeling very comfortable in there. And if you're a member of that Discord and you're watching this, hi. It's a lot of fun. It's a nicely sized Discord. It's not too overwhelming. I can kind of keep up. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that one. And the classics discussions and Mike's book reviews. I'm enjoying that too, particularly having just read Tess and then getting to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the month before was A Clockwork Orange, so that's a really good way for me to get through some classics that I haven't read or that I have read and want to reread. So yeah, let me know how you're getting on and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.